I'm Eric Schoenberg, Editor-in-Chief.
And I'm Jill Schlesinger, Editor-at-Large.
In today's Reality Check, several heavyweights are weighing in on financial reform. Are changes finally on the way? Jill, all the big thinkers in politics and government are thinking that we need to make some changes to enact financial reform. And yet, nothing seems to be happening after all the talk. How come?
Well, I think that it's really like there's no good idea when it's a year later. And here's the problem. Hank Paulson, the former Treasury Secretary, writes in the New York Times op-ed, he says, we need a systemic risk regulator. We need resolution authority. We need to be able to get failed financial institutions broken up without going through bankruptcy. These are not new ideas. These are ideas that have been floating around for a year. But in that year, you know what's happened? These companies have gotten better, they've healed, they've made a ton of money, they paid lobbyists millions of dollars to go up on the Hill, and we've lost our leverage. We are not seeing any movement because no one has the impetus to actually do anything that's outside of a box right now.
No, that is really depressing. There are some political debates, there are some political difficulties. For example, who is going to be this systemic risk regulator? Some people think it should be the Fed. Some people hate to give that much power to the Fed, holding them responsible for the crisis that just happened. Other people think it should be some kind of international regulatory body. And the international part is really key, because if you only have domestic regulations, companies will go offshore to get around the regulations. And there, things really do get sticky. You can see why Europeans, for example, with their problems with Greece right now, are a little iffy about any kind of supranational regulatory body affecting their financial system.
And you know what was missing in the Paulson speech and in a lot of the people who were in the crisis mode? You notice, Eric, they don't say anything about the consumer. It's all about the system, which is important. It really is, I get that. But what happened to protecting consumers in this process? Where did we go with that? It seemed to fizzle out. What happened?
No, that is a great point. I think that's the third leg of this regulatory stool. I mean, after all these problems originated at the consumer level, pushing consumers into mortgages and to debt that they couldn't afford. If that, and that they didn't understand too, if that could be fixed, a major source of temptation would be removed from the system.
Okay, I don't want to bring you down at the end of the segment, but I'm really feeling discouraged. I feel like nothing's going to happen. Is that my reality check today? Tell me it isn't so, Eric.
I don't think it's so.
All right.
Here's a note to hang on to.
Okay.
Regulatory reform after the Great Depression didn't come on until 1933 with the Securities Act, 1934 with the Advisors Act, 1940 with the Investment Company Act. So these things take time to work themselves through the system. There is no disagreement among people that there ought to be a systemic risk regulator, that there ought to be a way to liquidate these too big to fail banks. So as long as there's consensus, there is no political mileage to be gotten out of saying, I'm in favor of systemic risk. I'm against liquidating banks that are too big to fail. So out of that, let's be hopeful.
All right. Well then, that's your reality check. Thanks for watching.